5 people walked out their front doors and were never seen again. No clues, no struggle, just vanished. From Bryce Laspisa to Rey Rivera, these disappearances are baffling, haunting, and still unsolved. In this video, we explore 5 people who walked out their front door and were never seen again. Story 1. A young college student drives through the night, heading home to see his parents. Hours later, his car is found crashed and empty. The driver nowhere in sight. What happened to Bryce Laspisa? And how could someone vanish so completely in a place surrounded by search teams, helicopters, and cameras? Bryce Laspisa was born on April 30th, 1994, and grew up in Illinois before moving with his parents, Karen and Michael Laspisa, to California. He was known as friendly, artistic, and creative, a bright young man who had just finished his sophomore year at Sierra College in Northern California. Friends described Bryce as fun, outgoing, and full of life. But as summer ended in August 2013, something changed. His friends noticed he was drinking heavily, acting distant, and possibly taking the prescription stimulant Vivance to stay awake playing video games. His friends grew alarmed, and soon his parents would too. Within days, Bryce's behavior became increasingly erratic, setting in motion one of the strangest disappearances in recent history. In late August, Bryce's roommate, Sean Dixon, called Bryce's mother, Karen, worried that something was seriously wrong. The next day, Bryce texted his girlfriend, Kim, saying she'd be better off without him. Concerned, Kim convinced him to visit in person. When Bryce arrived, he was emotional and distant. Kim refused to give back his car keys, fearing he was unfit to drive. Bryce called his mother, and after some persuasion, Kim reluctantly returned the keys. Bryce left her apartment at 11:30 p.m. That was the last time anyone saw him acting normal. At 1 a.m., Bryce called his mother again. She thought he was back at his apartment, but cell tower data showed he was already driving south. By 9 a.m., roadside assistance records showed he'd run out of gas in Buttonwillow, a small town near Bakersfield. A local repairman named Christian helped him refuel. Hours later, Christian checked back. Bryce hadn't moved. When Christian spoke to him again, Bryce seemed calm but distant. He told Christian he was just thinking. Concerned, Christian contacted Bryce's parents, who urged him to head home. Bryce promised he would. But that evening, police found him only 8 miles from where he'd been that morning. After 9 hours of almost no movement, officers questioned him and found nothing suspicious. Bryce insisted he was fine. He even spoke to his parents, saying he was repacking his car before heading home. Just after 2 a.m. on August 30th, Bryce told his mother he was too tired to drive and would pull over to rest. That was the last time anyone heard from him. At dawn, a passing worker noticed a broken guardrail near Castaic Lake. Below it lay Bryce's overturned Toyota Highlander. The rear window had been pushed out from the inside, and all of Bryce's belongings, his phone, wallet, and laptop, were still inside. Blood was found, but it wasn't enough to indicate a serious injury. His scent trail led briefly toward the lake and vanished. Search teams, helicopters, and divers combed the area for days. There was no sign of Bryce. Some believe he suffered a head injury and wandered off. Others think he may have planned to disappear, possibly suffering a psychological break, but no solid evidence has ever supported either theory. It's as if Bryce simply walked out of his own life and disappeared into thin air. More than a decade later, Bryce's parents still search for answers. Every anniversary, they post reminders that somewhere their son might still be alive. Was Bryce lost, disoriented, and unable to find his way back? Did he choose to vanish, or did something happen that no one ever saw coming? Until the truth surfaces, the mystery of Bryce Laspisa remains one of the strangest unsolved disappearances in modern America. Story 2. In the quiet suburbs of San Antonio, Texas, a family's life changed forever one summer afternoon in 1994. 13-year-old Nicholas Patrick Barclay was known for his mischievous smile, quick wit, and restless energy. He was also a troubled teen, often testing boundaries and running into trouble with the law. He'd once been caught stealing shoes and had a juvenile court hearing scheduled for June 14, 1994, a date he would never make. On June 13th, Nicholas spent the day playing basketball with friends. As the sun began to set, he called home for a ride. His mother, Beverly Dollar Hyde, had just finished a night shift and was asleep. His older brother, Jason, told him to walk the short distance home. Nicholas never arrived. At first, his family assumed he'd run off after an argument, something he had done before. But when hours turned into days and then weeks, concern turned into fear. The police searched the neighborhood, questioning friends and neighbors. But no trace of Nicholas was ever found. 3 months later, a strange report came in. Jason called authorities, claiming he saw Nicholas trying to break into their garage late one night. When confronted, the boy ran away. Officers searched the area again, but found nothing. No footprints, no clues, no sign that Nicholas had ever been there. The Barclay home was a place marked by struggle. Reports later revealed that the family had long battled financial stress and substance issues. Because Nicholas had a reputation for acting out, police initially treated his disappearance as a runaway case. It would take days before an official missing person report was filed. By then, crucial time was lost. Years passed with no answers, but in October 1997, 3 years after Nicholas vanished, a phone call came from across the ocean. Authorities in Linares, Spain, claimed to have found a boy matching Nicholas's description. The teenager said he had escaped from a trafficking ring that had taken him overseas. He spoke English with a heavy accent, wore dark glasses, and told a story of abuse and captivity. He said his captors had altered his appearance, changing his eye color and forcing him to learn another language. Desperate for hope, the Barclay family believed him. Nicholas's sister flew to Spain, and when she saw the young man, she embraced him without hesitation. Soon after, he was flown home to Texas, greeted by tears, cameras, and a wave of public sympathy. But behind that reunion, something didn't feel right. This Nicholas had brown eyes instead of blue. His hair was darker. His mannerisms were unfamiliar. Still, the family, perhaps blinded by years of grief, accepted him. It wasn't until a private investigator, Charlie Parker, began looking deeper that the truth unraveled. The boy living as Nicholas Barclay was not a teenager at all. He was Frédéric Bourdin, a 23-year-old man from France, known internationally for impersonating missing children. Bourdin eventually admitted the deception, saying he took Nicholas's identity to escape his own life. He was later convicted of passport fraud and forgery, but the revelation only deepened the mystery. What really happened to the real Nicholas Barclay? Investigators once considered the family itself. Reports say Beverly passed 2 lie detector tests and failed a third. Jason, who had been the last to speak to Nicholas and claimed to see him months later, died of an overdose in 1998, taking with him any secrets he might have held. More than 3 decades later, no trace of Nicholas has ever been found. If alive today, he would be in his 40s. The case remains one of the strangest in missing person history. A story not just of disappearance, but of deception, grief, and unanswered questions. Did something happen to Nicholas before he vanished in 1994? Or was his disappearance part of a secret that never reached the surface? If you believe Nicholas's case deserves more attention, share this story, because sometimes the truth hides in plain sight. Story 3. A devoted mother, a troubled marriage, and a night that changed everything. When 28-year-old Susan Powell vanished from her Utah home in 2009, her story became one of the most haunting missing person cases in America, filled with unanswered questions, strange behavior, and heartbreak that would last for years. This is the disappearance of Susan Powell. Susan Cox Powell was born on October 16, 1981, in New Mexico, and raised in a loving, close-knit family. She was known for her warmth, creativity, and deep faith. She married Joshua Powell in 2001, and the two settled in West Valley City, Utah, where they were raising their 2 young sons, Charlie and Braden. To friends, they seemed like a normal suburban family, but beneath the surface, tensions were building. By late 2009, Susan's friends began noticing signs of trouble in her marriage. She confided that she was unhappy, worried about Josh's behavior, finances, and growing distance from their church community. On December 6, 2009, Susan attended church services with her family and later invited a friend over for a visit. She seemed tired but calm. That night would be the last time anyone outside her home saw her alive. The next morning, Josh failed to show up for work, and the children didn't arrive at daycare. Concerned co-workers contacted the police. When officers entered the home, they found no Susan, 2 fans blowing on a wet carpet, and her person's cell phone still inside. Hours later, Josh returned with their sons, claiming he had taken them on a spontaneous camping trip in the Utah desert at 2 a.m. Detectives were immediately suspicious. Authorities launched a massive search in the freezing desert around Simpson Springs, but found no trace of Susan. Friends and family insisted she would never have left her children voluntarily. As the investigation deepened, strange details emerged. Susan had written a secret will expressing fear for her safety and saying if anything happened to her, it may not be an accident. Despite this, there was no physical evidence to arrest Josh. He moved with the boys to Washington State, living near his father, Stephen Powell, whose own disturbing behavior only deepened public concern. Detectives continued to search, holding press conferences and combing remote areas year after year, but Susan's whereabouts remained unknown. In 2012, the case took an unimaginable turn. During a supervised visit with his children, Josh Powell set fire to his home, killing himself and both boys. The tragedy devastated Susan's family and the nation, but even in their grief, they continued to fight for answers and for change. Susan's father, Chuck Cox, has since become an advocate for victims of domestic abuse and missing persons, ensuring her story continues to raise awareness about early warning signs and the need for intervention. To this day, Susan Powell's body has never been found, but her memory and her family's resilience remain unbroken. The disappearance of Susan Powell is not only a mystery, it's a reminder of courage, hope, and the power of love that refuses to fade. If you have any information about this case, contact the West Valley City Police Department. And if you believe Susan's story deserves to be remembered, share this video and subscribe for more cases like this one, because every vanished story deserves to be found. Story 4. A woman sets off on a cross-country road trip, searching for freedom and meaning. Days later, her Jeep is found wrecked deep in the Washington woods, engine still warm, but she's nowhere to be found. This is the unsolved disappearance of Leah Roberts. Leah Toby Roberts was born in 1976 in Durham, North Carolina. Bright, creative, and full of spirit, Leah was a student of literature and art, and a lover of life on the open road. But by her mid-20s, tragedy had shaken her world. She lost both her parents and her brother in a short span of time. Friends said the losses changed her. She began to question everything about her purpose, her path, and what it meant to live freely. Inspired by Jack Kerouac's book On the Road, Leah dreamed of heading west to find meaning in solitude, nature, and adventure. In March 2000, Leah packed her white 1993 Jeep Cherokee with her belongings and left North Carolina. She didn't tell anyone exactly where she was going. Before leaving, she left a note for her roommate that read, "I'm not suicidal, I'm just going on an adventure." Over the next several days, Leah drove across the country, making her way toward the Pacific Northwest. She called her sister Kara from the road, cheerful and full of energy, saying she was following her spirit. But on March 18th, just days later, a jogger discovered Leah's Jeep in a ravine off a remote logging road near Mount Baker, Washington. The crash scene was puzzling. The Jeep's headlights were still faintly glowing, and the engine was warm, yet Leah was gone. Inside were her clothes, jewelry, cash, and even her cat's carrier, untouched. A blanket was draped over a broken window, as if someone had slept inside. Investigators found no signs of a struggle, but something felt off. Experts later concluded that the crash appeared staged. The Jeep might have been deliberately driven or pushed down the slope. What happened to Leah Roberts? One theory suggests she wandered away from the crash site, disoriented or injured, and got lost in the wilderness. But search teams, dogs, and helicopters covered every inch of that forest with no trace. Another theory points to possible foul play. Witnesses claim to have seen Leah at a gas station days before the crash with two unidentified men. Could she have accepted help from strangers who meant her harm? A third theory is more symbolic, that Leah, inspired by Kerouac's philosophy, might have staged her disappearance to start anew, but her passport and money were left behind. If she wanted a new life, why leave every resource she had? To this day, no confirmed sightings or evidence of Leah have ever surfaced. Her disappearance remains one of the most baffling cases in the Pacific Northwest. Leah Roberts sought peace, healing, and a new beginning, but somewhere on that lonely mountain road, her story stopped and became legend. Was she a free spirit who vanished by choice, or a victim of something darker? One Jeep, one road, and one mystery, still unsolved. What do you think happened to Leah Roberts? Story 5. Rey Rivera was a 32-year-old writer and aspiring filmmaker living in Baltimore, Maryland. He had recently moved there with his wife Allison to work for his longtime friend Porter Stansberry at a financial newsletter company described by friends as charismatic, funny, and full of life. Rey had dreams far beyond corporate writing. He wanted to make movies, to tell stories that mattered, but in May of 2006, his own story would turn into one of the most haunting unsolved mysteries of the decade. On May 16, 2006, Allison Rivera left on a business trip to Richmond, Virginia. Rey stayed behind, working from home. That evening, around 6 p.m., he received a phone call that would change everything. According to investigators, the call came from the offices of his employer, Stansberry and Associates, but no one knows who made it or what was said. Moments later, Rey grabbed his car keys and rushed out of the house. He was never seen again. 2 days later, his car was found near the historic Belvedere Hotel in downtown Baltimore. Inside were his phone and glasses, both undamaged, but there was no sign of Rey. Then, on May 24th, building staff discovered a hole in the lower roof of the Belvedere's annex, directly beneath the 14th floor conference room. Inside that room, they found Rey's body. Authorities initially believed Rey may have fallen from the top of the building, but there was a problem. The physics didn't make sense. The hole was too far from the edge for someone to have simply fallen or jumped unaided. Investigators and independent experts struggled to understand how Rey could have landed where he did. Early assessments suggested Rey's death may have been self-inflicted, but his family and friends were unconvinced. Allison found a note taped behind their computer, folded neatly, addressed to brothers and sisters, referencing Freemasons, movie directors, and secret societies. It was cryptic, filled with film quotes, odd names, and references to people Rey admired. The FBI later concluded it wasn't a note of farewell, but no one could explain what it meant. Rey's job also raised questions. His employer, Porter Stansberry, refused to cooperate with investigators, and employees at the firm were instructed not to speak to police. Some believe Rey may have uncovered something at work that led to his death. Others point to the Belvedere's security cameras. While most footage was available, one specific camera that faced the area where Rey may have entered the building was mysteriously not working that night. To this day, no one knows how or why Rey ended up in that room. Nearly 2 decades later, Rey Rivera's story remains one of the most confounding modern mysteries. Part tragedy, part conspiracy, part riddle. Was it an accident, a cover-up, or something far stranger? Allison Rivera still seeks the truth, refusing to believe the man she loved simply gave up on life. Rey once dreamed of telling stories that would move people, but in the end, it was his own story that continues to move and mystify the world. Some mysteries fade with time, but others, like the case of Rey Rivera, only grow deeper. What do you think really happened that night in Baltimore? Bryce, Nicholas, Susan, Leah, Rey, all vanished without a trace. Some mysteries may never be solved, but their stories live on. Remember them, share them, and ask yourself, what would you do if the world just disappeared? This is Vanished,